Hello everybody, this is the first video for week 2 of our online class, week 11 in the full context of the semester. I hope you're all doing good. I hope you're able to settle into this whole self-isolation thing in a way that feels more comfortable than it did last week. I think I am starting to do that. I just poached an egg for the first time and I got 1 out of 2 right, so my culinary skills are developing very quickly. And I've also done 10 days of yoga, and I've only skipped 2 days. So I'm becoming a master of all trades, in other words. So what I'd like you to do is go to the folder for today and download the rubric for the CRP. We're going to take a look at it together, and that's what this video is going to be about. And then you'll see the other tasks for that day. And I'll give you the word of the day at the end of this video. Okay, so I've got the rubric in front of me here. You can see that this project, like the first two, is worth 150 points, which we've already seen when we looked at the prompt. 15% of our final grade. So we've read it a couple times before, but again, just give a little mention of the fact that rubrics are good tools, but imperfect tools for a thing that's weird in general. The idea of grading, writing, assigning a value to a piece of writing is a thing that I wish that I wasn't a thing, but it is, because we're all here to get a good grade. So I just want you to know that in an ideal world, we would talk about your writing together. I would not judge it in such a way, and we would talk about the strengths and weaknesses and learn from those without having to condescend to a number. But we obviously don't live in an ideal world, which I think we're all realizing. But yeah, let's look at the guts of this rubric now. Invention and purpose. Let's take a look at the excellent box here. Excellent for me, and this is probably the usefulness of this video, because I know you could just go through this on your own and read it through, but I'm telling you how I look at this and how I use it to grade. Which is information that you probably want to have, right? How your teacher uses a rubric to give you your points. So to me, excellent means excellent. You are maybe somebody who's used to getting a lot of A's. It's kind of your habit to get A's. I know that was kind of me coming out of high school, so whenever I didn't get one, I was a little bit annoyed because I kind of felt entitled to it, or I felt used to this idea of getting an A. If it's not excellent, I'm not giving it an A. And to me, what excellent means is you're doing more than I've asked you to do, or you're doing what I've asked you to do in a way that shows exceptional effort. Not exceptional talent, not exceptional, innate writing ability, but you've done what I've asked you to do, and you've gone over the top with that. So invention and purpose. Excellent would demonstrate a thorough understanding of context, audience, and purpose that is responsive to a major problem posed by the scenario. So that latter phrase, responsive to the problem posed by the scenario. You all have good research questions, and I noticed that in class when we were working on those questions and I was troubleshooting them with you. So I do want to praise you all again for coming up with probably some of the better questions that I've seen from my students. But a thorough understanding of context. So you're taking this question, understanding how it might fit in the real world, and letting your sub-questions kind of follow from that. Audience and purpose. So your audience, again, I mentioned this in class. I'm going to mention it again. I want us to stop thinking about the papers that we write as being things that you do because your teacher told you, and it's a hoop that you jump through in order to get a grade. It may absolutely feel that way, and it may be that way in reality, but you have to get yourself out of that mindset if you want to enable yourself to write a fantastic paper, because everything you write at university, and this will become more, I think, easy to believe the further along in your degree that you progress, has the ability to be published. It has the ability to be worth being published. Like some of the research questions you were having, if you were to do a real good, 10-page paper on that with rigorous research, great sources, Absolutely, that would be worth sharing with people, and people would be interested in that. It's not just a hoop that you're jumping through for English 105. You're writing something that's worth sharing. So that's why it's worth thinking about the audience and the purpose. And in your conclusion for the CRP, if you're kind of showing me that you're thinking about who this pertains to and who might be interested in reading this research, that would be excellent. So you might get an A in that category. I'm going to jump over to D so we can just see what would result in that developing score. Demonstrates minimal attention to context, audience, and purpose that is inadequately responsive to a major problem. So if you somehow kind of lost track of your research question, or you seemed not to really care about connecting that big picture idea with your research, and you clearly are feeling like this is more of a hoop to jump through, you don't really care about this paper, and that shows through, then that would probably result in closer to that D box. Okay, content and development and analysis uses appropriate, relevant, and compelling content to illustrate specifically how the problem may be understood and possibly solved. So possibly solved means that you don't actually have to fix like the opioid epidemic. Nobody's expecting you to come up with like a fail-safe solution. That is one way in which obviously we're not taking a class in a specific field here. This is a composition class. So, but possibly solved. So you're exploring like possible solutions here. Sophisticated analysis of the scenario. So if you use that scenario to come up with a really interesting research question and sub-questions that seem like helpful for people who might be suffering from this in the real world, and I could see that imagination and that critical thinking at work, to me that would be excellent. And down here in D, we see uses some appropriate and mostly relevant content to try to show how problem may be understood and possibly solved. So you see the language in this box. It's not like it's saying, oh, you did a terrible job, or it's incoherent, so it gets a D. That's relatively mild language. You could have some appropriate and mostly relevant content, and it doesn't look terrible, but we are striving for a higher standard than just some appropriate sources. So if you wanted to avoid that, you would find at least 10 sources for your CRP. They would all be strictly relevant to one of your sub-questions and use the BEAM acronym to help you with that. If you can't tell which source is going into which of those types of sources, the B, E, A, or M, then that's a sign that maybe you should rethink why you're including this source at all. Arrangement and audience awareness. Demonstrates nuanced audience awareness throughout, starting with original title and compelling opening. So these audience awareness variables are things like the readability of your paper, the lack of typos and incomplete sentences and apostrophe mistakes. I want you all to be on top of that kind of a thing, because when it comes to a research paper, that makes more of a difference. If you're writing like an iSearch or an OP or something like that, and you have some grammatical missteps, it's less of a big deal because the point of those papers was more about you as a person. The CRP, it's about your research, so it's much more distracting when you don't use an apostrophe for a possessive or something like that. So I will be looking out for that kind of a thing. It will manifest in both the style and convention section and the audience awareness. And then if you follow all of the parts of the prompt, like the different sections of this paper, you have an intro, a lit review, your own research section, conclusion, then that falls under the arrangement and audience awareness category. Okay, sources and evidence. Demonstrates skillful use of varied, credible, relevant sources and a rigorous research process. So this can be an area where maybe you touch base with me, ask my opinion on your sources, and I'm happy to give you that opinion. So varied, relevant, and credible. So your sources don't feel like you just researched random sources and plopped them in and then found a way to finagle them as relevant. You're starting with your questions and you're finding a source that can illuminate some element of that question and then linking it with the other sources. This is where that synthesis idea is going to come in into the rubric, sources and evidence. So don't forget about the synthesis or the comparing and contrasting of the more than one article here. And down under this gray bar where the things are weighted a little bit less, style, formatted conventions. So you're editing your work and it does not feel slipshod. It does not feel like one writing style in one section of the paper totally changes, mid-paragraph to another where you've glued together two people's sections. You want to be editing the writing styles to make it look like one person wrote this. And just catch those mistakes, catch those typos. I don't think I've read any paper from any student this semester that did not have an apostrophe mistake or an uncapitalized proper noun or some silly mistake that could have been caught. So please try to do that for the CRP because it's more important now. Delivery, everyone should be getting an A in this. This is probably the one section where I'm expecting all excellence here. So easy to read document, meets the format and length expectations. Basically just doing what I've asked you to do, following the prompt. And don't take any like weird curves into some random thing here. Okay, and then the post-write we are familiar with. Okay, the word of the day is onerous or onerous. Onerous. And please check your emails if you are out of the habit of doing that. Send me an email if you have any questions about this rubric, and I'll see you tomorrow.